Humanity once lived on a planet called Earth. When the people of Earth learned that an enormous asteroid was on a collision course with their world, they decided to migrate to a new planet to escape extinction. Paraspera ad Astra. Through hardships to the stars. With that inspiring phrase at their slogan, humanity rallied together and began a vast and far-reaching space exploration project to find a new home. Years after the plan's inception, explorers miraculously discovered a planet closely resembling Earth only 5,000 light years away. They dubbed it Astra. And that is the subject of Kenta Shinohara's Astra Lost in Space, his manga that he's been serializing in Shonen Jump Plus from 2016 through 2017 and has been available on Viz's free section on the Shonen Jump website. And we are here to talk about it today. And joining us, we have a very special guest, the editor for Astra Lost in Space for Viz Media and Shonen Jump. We have Marlene First.
Yay!
Woo, Astra!
Yay, Astra! Astra. It's great. Everyone should read it.
So the premise of Astra is that there's this group of 9 kids who are going on a school field trip to Planet Camp, which is literally a planet designed for camping, as its name suggests. None of the kids have ever met each other before. At least most of them haven't. Supposedly the point of that was to group up kids who normally wouldn't work with each other and force them to build upon their teamworking skills. So they're dumped on this planet where they're supposed to just live there, survive for a few days without adult supervision, and take care of Kitteri's much younger sister Funika as an additional task. At least, that's what should have happened. As soon as they arrive on the planet, a mysterious wormhole appears, and they get sucked through it into outer space. Fortunately, there happens to be a ship nearby. Unfortunately, they weren't transported into space above the planet they were on. They were transported many light years away, and it will take them a month to make the journey home. There aren't enough supplies to make the trip on the ship, so they devise a plan to make a pat of planets to stop at along the way. They figure out that there are 5 planets within reachable distance between one another where they can stop and refuel their resources, and this will just barely allow them to survive the long journey back. So it's basically a space survival story. They have to travel to these different planets. They have to work together, get to know each other better, and reconcile any misunderstandings between them. They have to survive on many strange planets with crazy climates and creatures, like a planet where the top predator in the ecosystem happens to be a mushroom, a fungus. So they have to deal with all these things as they make their way back home. But also, they uncover a conspiracy. It wasn't by accident or chance that they were attacked by the wormhole and transported into space. Someone planned this, and someone has also sabotaged the ship they're on, and is still trying to kill them even now. So they also have to figure out who this traitor in the group is. So there's also this mystery, a thriller element to the story as they slowly gather clues to unravel and expose the traitor's identity and why someone had tried to assassinate them in outer space.
Yeah, the farther you read into the series, that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as, all the conspiracy goes. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I read, somebody sent me a review of Astra, and it was weird to me. Like, they're like, oh, if you like cute girls and, like, mindless space, whatever, like, you'll like the series, but otherwise you won't. And I was just like, did you read this? Like, did you finish Volume 1? Like, Volume 1 itself ends on, like, somebody cut out the parts of the communication system, and they did it recently. Like, already at the end of Volume 1, we know that what we're reading isn't what we thought it was for the other whole part of Volume 1, and that just sets up the first mystery. So you got, like, the potential murderer on the group who's, like, out of their mind and whatever. Then the next big conspiracy is of, like, oh, Ulgar's brother was killed for some reason, and we don't know why, but we know that this is the thing. We also get that, like, most of these kids are adopted, or their parents don't really love them. There's also the scenes with the adults that you get that are like, oh, like, we work with together. Like, Kitari's mom and Zach's dad are like, oh, we always work together a lot. And even though, like, we're completely separate things, like, in our fields, and people are starting to talk about, like, our relationship, and, like, we're not really in an official relationship, but we do see each other a lot. Like, it's hinting that they actually work together more than they should be, kind of thing, rather than them actually being together. And even from there, you get the whole, subtle hints. I would buy into the theory of the Shar's flashback color discrepancy. You heard, if you remember, like, that was the one flashback that I believe that didn't have, that was, like, only gray toned on the background.
Interesting.
Rather than black, or whatever, something like that. I do buy into that it was like, oh, he was lying.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying, yeah.
That was a good tell, a sign that something was amiss. Even when we first meet him, there's a disconnect between his supposed background and his actions and personality.
Yeah.
But that was a very cool, subtle, artistic touch, where Shinohara subliminally lets you know that, hey, something is off here in what we're seeing. And that there's something about Char's past that seems fictionalized, constructed, false.
Yeah, see, I didn't even pick up on that detail. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's exactly why he did it. I don't know if that's why he did it. I just remember reading theories on that and, like, looking back on it. I'm like, oh, I could buy into that theory on that one. So you got stuff like that. Even at the end of it, where he's, like, sitting there, like, I'm sorry, Sarah. It's like, why are you apologizing? Like, looking at her picture. I don't know. Also, if you notice, very, very early on, when the orb attacks the second time, or what ends up being known as the wormhole later, when it appears the second time, the second he says the second Aerie says that she has a photographic memory, the orb disappears. Like, the second she says it, it's just, the next panel is, oh, it's gone.
Wow.
And that was the moment where Shars realized that, okay, this girl has the two different color eyes, and she has the photographic memory. She is Sarah. She's Sarah's clone. And I can't kill her.
That's incredibly smart storytelling. Astra is really rewarding to reread because Shinohara planned it so well, and the storytelling is so tight and top-notch that everything comes together in a way that feels like Shinohara had everything planned out from the start, and there's so many details that point to that truth. Many seemingly minute details are later recontextualized in impressive ways. Shinohara really had a sense of what he wanted to do with the story and the direction he wanted to take his characters from the beginning, and he followed it through to the end. His storytelling is concise and precise, and it all flows so naturally. I think that's what makes it so rewarding to read, that it was a fully realized story from the start. At least, that's how it feels.
Yeah, like, Shinohara's foreshadowing came down to, like, as early as a panel in chapter 1. And I still feel stupid that I didn't notice it. Like,
it's such a subtle detail! Like, when you go back...
And we knew that Kanata was super athletic, even before that, because he's, like, the one who's, like, quickly saves this girl and whatever and whatnot. And you knew in chapter 1 that he was, like, really athletic, and even by chapter 2 you knew. And it's just like, Shar should not have been there. It's just the whole time, like, it was so obvious. And it's set up in such a way where you, like, start kicking yourself, like, oh my god.
I guess, I don't know if we really want to go through, like, every character, because there's a lot of them.
I think we should, because every character is interesting. But luckily, because the series is so short, there isn't an incredible depth of stuff to say about everyone. At least not in the same way you would have for a long-running series. We could devote a whole podcast analyzing a single character from Gintama, for instance. But because Astra is so short, everyone gets to have their time to shine and has a well-realized character arc. It never feels like we lose focus with any of them during the course of the story. The cast remains very connected to these 9 people. 10 later on when they introduce Paulina. But yeah, everyone seems to have their moments and get their development. Though there are definitely characters that get more focus than others. Kanata, Aries, and Charse in particular.
Yeah, and Zack is the one who figured out everything. Kitari and Funicia's, like, similarities really kicked off everything. Obviously, like, Charse is my favorite character. Luca and Ulgar are, like, a close second, though. Like, I've been pretty open about that. That, like, I think that as a platform, Jump Plus gives a lot of creative freedom that the competition-heavy print magazine doesn't really allow for in the same way. And I thought it was interesting having a character who is openly, well, later he's openly bisexual and also intersexual. I think it's interesting that a manga actually had anything like that, especially shonen manga under the Jump brand, essentially. And I think that Luca and Ulgar's growth is some of the best in the series. Charse kept his cool until he kind of lost his shit in chapter, like, 42. He actually, like, really kept his cool, which was kind of surprising. God damn it, Toma. So, yeah, I think that especially Ulgar, who I'll say is the person who had to do all of the scripts for the series, and the majority of his dialogue for a long time was shut up. So, and later on he's like, Captain, don't you have, like, one of your sayings for us to, like, make the situation better, or stuff like that, and he starts opening up to people. So Ulgar, I think, had really good growth. Yunha too, obviously. Aries was always very positive throughout the whole adventure. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about Luca because I was very pleasantly surprised by how his character is handled. Like you said, we don't often see shonen manga, especially shonen Jump manga, depict non-binary characters in such a respectful way. When Luca is revealed as intersex, they properly explain what that means, and the other characters treat him very respectfully. They don't make any jokes at his expense about his intersex body. Any jokes like that are stuff that he says himself on his own terms.
Which is great.
Yep. I love how much he teased Ulgar.
It's so cute.
Very good timing.
And it's so nice to see an openly bisexual character being portrayed in a shonen manga too. Because so often you might have a character be implied to be interested in both men and women, but they never come out and say that explicitly. But Luca outright says that he finds the guys hot and the girls cute, and that he's attracted to both. It's very refreshing to see an unequivocal acknowledgement of a character's bisexuality.
I mean,
sorry.
No, I was gonna say, like, I said it on the last podcast, and I'll say it again. Like, I feel like, as far as shonen manga goes, I feel like Shinohara really is the best at conveying these kinds of characters very respectfully, and I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I had read Skip Dance before Astra, I might have not been as surprised, because in the final arc of Skip Dance, Shinohara depicts a transgender character extremely well, and I was really impressed with that. I really applaud Shinohara for how he writes non-binary characters. So often characters like that are played for laughs and are the butt of a joke. But Luca is awesome. He's just a great character who is not defined by his intersexuality, but it's still an important part of his character that ties into his development that's done in a touchingly empathetic and intelligent way.
When it comes to, like, also Luca as a character and just his perspective on things in the series, like, after they find out they're all clones and whatnot, all the characters are kind of, like, really down on themselves, and then you get to Luca, who's like, I've already kind of accepted in life that, like, things just happen as they happen, and I just gotta make the best of the situation and stuff like that. Like, I think that Luca as a character really added to, like, a different perspective for all the characters in the series. And I do like, actually, if you notice towards the end, like, in the last chapter itself, Luca was drawn much more, like, feminine than he started out as. And you got all the guys who are together, minus Ulgar, who's off on his journalism stuff. But you got, like, Shars and Kanata and Zach together at the end. You got your guys, and you got Luca hanging out with the girls, and it was just like, maybe he did change it. Like, we don't obviously know what he did with his gender identity in the end, but, like, it's pretty clear that he grew up in a way that maybe he did decide to go a different path or whatever, which I found really interesting with the change in his character design specifically. Yeah, no, Shars was my favorite character for Shars reasons, but, like, Luca, close second, him and Ulgar together.
Personally, what I come to Shinohara for at this point is I just, with Luca in particular, and a lot of, like, what happens in the final arc of Sket Dance, like, I love that, what I love about Shinohara's works is that he, like, Shinohara at some points, well, might as well just, like, he might as well just write a footnote on like, certain pages of a series, like, hey, it's okay to be yourself. I feel like when I read Shinohara's manga, I feel like he is telling me, hey, like, these characters are who they are, and you should feel okay with who you are. Like, that's such a big theme at the end of Sket Dance, and obviously that's a big part that sentiment leads to a great moment with Luca that you were just talking about, where Luca's just like, I don't really care where I came from, like, I'm me, and that's all that matters. And I think that's such a positive message that I feel like we don't see enough of in shonen manga, personally. Or at least not in such a, like, earnest way, I guess.
It's definitely a common theme in shonen manga, but I think the way Shinohara does it so directly with the kind of stories he writes is just so powerful and impactful.
It feels personal.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, I think that theme of being true to yourself, being comfortable with who you are, is like a huge overarching theme in Shinohara's works, and especially in Astra. And he ties it to a variety of relatable characters who you really empathize with. That grounding really elicits a lot of emotional power, especially when these characters are finally able to embrace themselves. In Yunua's case, for example, she has no confidence in herself because of the way her mother raised her and put her down in life. So she tries not to speak or stand out. But she has this talent for singing and is able to become more comfortable letting out her voice. She realizes that there is something that she's good at, that there's something she can add that enriches the group. And she becomes more comfortable putting herself out there socially. She cuts her long hair, she takes off her glasses, and she starts being more open, talking with people, and letting them know her feelings. And that's a really simple but powerful character arc that I think can resonate with a lot of introverted people who might not think highly of themselves or have problems making friends. A lot of the character arcs are resolved well. Shinohara really kept good tabs on how each one was ending. What we see of the characters in the epilogue is satisfying, though, of course, I would have liked to have seen more of what they were up to, and some of them did get more attention than others. But while I'm not much of a shipper, I was definitely pleased at the implication that Luca and Olgar are in a relationship, since Olgar is apparently spending a lot of time in Luca's house.
And you know what? Something about that just feels right, honestly.
Yep. No, I've said that, like, I wanted them to end up together. So, in my heart.
Oh, man.
I'm interested that Charles is your favorite character, Marlene, because you found him so creepy at the beginning of the series and you didn't trust him. You had speculated for a long time that he was a traitor. I mean, I'm sure your turnaround on him is tied to his development and what we learn about him later on, but it's interesting that your opinion of him seems to have risen quite a bit.
Well, when it comes to the characters that I personally like, I really like the Ikemen character who is kind of a jerk, or clearly, like, subtly the bad guy, or is a bad guy and a total jerk, and characters like that, like, for example, like, my favorite character in, like, Fate, for example, would be, like, Gilgamesh. He's an Ikemen character who's also, like, super, super messed in the head, in, like, or even, like, the character that's kind of, like, a little douchey, like, for example, like, Hagakure in Bulls Beats was in there for, like, 2 panels, and I'm like, man, I already like this guy, like, I know what his priorities are, so, like, that's just the type of character that I like, which is why Charles is, like, my favorite character regardless, like, oh, he's super calm and collected, but also super creepy, and that's what I like. And he would just he would get aroused talking about science. And I'm like, this guy is hilarious. Like, I could get behind this. This is good.
Yeah, he got quite excited when he got the opportunity to dissect things.
Oh my god, I loved the 4 comas with, like, him, and then there's, like, the one with Kanata in the bath, and the other one with Zach in the bath. And, like, Kiteri's just misunderstanding I'm just like, this is perfect. This, like, I'm sitting there, like, there's also, like, the really funny one, about Stars and, like, his weird mannerisms. And it's like, there's sometimes where he sneezes and it sounds like he's saying his own name. And I'm like, oh, this is so cute.
Those 4 comas were adorable.
Okay, if we're talking about the 4 comas, I think my favorite one, and I think I jokingly tweeted that Zach became my favorite character because of this one. I like the one where both Kanata and Kiteri, where the both of them are like, I want something sweet, I want sugar, and then Zach fixes up something, and he makes, like, these 2 robots who, like, talk sweet to each other, yes. And they're both, like, really worried about it.
Like, exactly, it's like he's the one who's suffering the most.
I thought that was honestly probably the funniest joke in the entire series for me. Honestly, I thought that was really great. I wasn't expecting that is a joke I would expect in Sket Dance. It's so great.
There was a lot of the plants. The plant names and the animal names were actually kind of hard to translate. There was the melon fruit or whatever that was actually in the 4 coma, and, like, my translator is like, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know what we do. And then, like, we go to Andy, it's like, what do we do? He's like, I don't know what we do. And, like, I'm talking about Lexi, he's like, we don't know either. Like it was, some of them were, like, in Japanese they made sense, but then, like, in English they didn't. So there was that. For 4 comas, that was one of the 4 comas, so I thought about it. Another, like, the 4 comas were great. I'm trying to think of, like, the ones that I really enjoyed. Like, a lot of them. I like the one with the parents, the mommy and daddy of the ship with the rebellious teenager. Zach and Kanata with Olgar just being like, shut up, mom, shut up, dad. And, like, young man, you're not gonna, like, take your meals in your room, you have to be with everyone else, and, like, oh, don't bother him, like, stuff like that. That was funny. And it's like, shut up.
I think there was a 4 coma about this one, which really tapped into a relationship I wish we got more of in Astra, was the kind of brotherly, sisterly relationship with Olgar and Kiteri's little sister Funi.
Oh my god!
I really wanted more of that, because, like, that's, I feel like there's just so much potential for cute there, and the little bit of that I like that we got, but I really needed more of that. Honestly, that was so adorable.
There's a lot of great humor in Astra Lost in Space. I think my favorite joke is probably when Zack flatly reveals that he loves Kittery, and everyone is taken aback by his blunt honesty. They all ask him what he likes best about her, and he stoically states that he thinks she's cute and stuff. And then they have these wild, out-of-breath reactions because they can't take it. Zack's blunt honesty is too adorable for their hearts to handle.
Yeah, no, that was really funny. I was just like, because it was just like, oh yeah, no, like, of course we're getting married. Like, he says it, like, so casually, and it's just like, she's like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, no, like, we promised each other when we were 5, so, like, of course that's, like, it's just, like, this kid. It was, like, almost, like Robo. like, it sounded like something, like, Robo would say. Like, oh, yeah, no, like, we said that, so that's, like, obviously it. I just kind of understood that that's what was happening. Like, Zack, his whole life was just, like, whatever they said when they were 5, like, that was a thing. And he just kind of assumed that they were just going to get married no matter what, which is really cute.
He's saying all these quirky, romantic things with a straight face, with no hint of embarrassment at all.
It's like, of course she's really cute. Like, yeah, no, I think that she's adorable. Oh, I love her. Like, the bored look on his face. I'm like, dude, please. Like, at least, like,
yeah,
change your face.
That was amazing.
It gets to the point where, like, Ares wants to, like, poke more at Zack and make him say more blunt things, and they just get more explosive. That gag was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think my favorite gag in the series is when I forget what chapter it is, but it's pretty early on where they all actually sit down and, like, eat together outside the spaceship, and Ares writes in her diary about how, like, you know, we still have a journey left to go through, but, like, I'm learning about everybody and it makes me feel better. And Kanata's like, wait, I haven't introduced myself yet. What? I'm the main character. What? They're all just, that I thought that was pretty good.
They're like, oh, but we already knew who you were, kind of. You kind of told us, like, 5 seconds into the manga. It's just like, okay. Oh, yeah, I liked how there was, like that one really, like, almost fourth wall breaking thing. It's like, yeah, really serious things could happen, even if it's, like, hidden in a comedy manga or, like, something like that. I think Lucas says, and they're like, wait, what? There was a lot of good, like, funny moments. A lot of them were with Shars and Ares regarding food and, like, yeah, it was like one of them was like, oh yeah, I just made this really disgusting food. Like, do you want to try it? And she's like, yeah, of course. Like, it's like, it's so gross, it'll make you want to retch. She's just like, sounds great. And I'm like, Ares, don't eat that. No. Like, there's all these, like, really fun moments between Ares and Shars. I know, like, we're focusing on, like, main characters mostly. I feel bad, like, Yunfa had great growth as well. I feel bad, like, she kind of felt like she was just there in the background even after she came out of the background.
That's pretty tragically ironic, if you think about it. She has a good character arc too, and personally I think she's probably the cutest in the group, but you know, that's just my bias.
Yeah.
Well, I think Yunhwa had a great moment in the final chapter, where she sings a really sweet, emotional song that really touches upon the lessons they learned during their entire journey. So I think she had a very satisfying part to play in the conclusion. And even though she didn't get much more development after her main arc, I didn't think her presence diminished because she was still a part of everything they went through as a group. So she still felt relevant and involved in the story. But yeah, I would agree that Kanata, Ares, and Chars definitely get the most screen time and the biggest roles to play in the series' climax.
Yeah, Kanata, Ares. I would say it was more like Kanata, Ares, Chars, Luca, and Ulgar were like and Zack. And Zack were the
of course.
Core characters, and then Kitari kind of was there, like, to complain, and then...
Yeah, and she's also a vehicle for a lot of great humor.
Yeah, she, like, subtly pushed the plot. Phoenicia was there, obviously.
Yeah, Funaga probably has the least to do in the series, since most of her stuff gets resolved on the first planet they visit, And being a little girl, she can't really help out much in the later adventures.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she had two big plot points. It was, it didn't really translate well, actually. It was Bigo, the puppet. Their group, it was more obvious in Japanese, like Bigo the puppet, and then their group Bigo, or B5. She was that purpose, and then also the purpose of being like, oh, I love my little sister, like, I want to really find out maybe my mom had an affair or something like that. And then they find out that Phoenicia is the clone of Kitari. So that was, like, Phoenicia's point, but she didn't really have any growth, but she was also, like, little. Though, you were mentioning also the little sister and big brother Ulgar Phoenicia relationship. It was, like, while it didn't happen too much during the manga, it was great that, like, at the end of the manga itself, like, Ulgar is, like, picking Phoenicia up from, or, like, meeting, Paulina at the school and, like, talking to Phoenicia, being like, oh, yeah, like, go shopping, like, something like that. And, like, it's clear that Ulgar still has some relationship with Phoenicia, which I thought was kind of cute.
Yeah.
And Ulgar looks exactly like his brother.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, Shinohara set up the idea that these characters were clones of their parents because of subtle similarities of how identical the characters look to their parents. Especially Kitari and Funaga, where a joke is made early on explicitly commenting on how similar they look to each other. And then their uncanny resemblance is what leads them to figure out the secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second? Because, man, I feel so embarrassed because I'm sure maybe Sid will put a link to it in the show notes for the episode. But I recorded my thoughts on Astra as I was reading in a Twitter thread. You can follow me at SniperKing323. So if you go through my thread, you could see some of my like reactions and thoughts and like predictions on things like, you know, like as soon as they bring up the idea that that Phoenicia and Kitari are like the same in a lot of ways, I'm, you know, obviously that's a red flag, and I'm like, they're totally going to be clones, aren't they? What's great is that not only are they clones, but everybody is a clone. I was legitimately not expecting that. Like I love it. I love it just in stories in general where it's like, the twist looks really obvious, but then like they just kind of take it a step further. Like, no, it's the same way for everybody. Like, oh, everybody's like, I was literally like, wait, all of them? Like, I love that so much because I totally wasn't expecting that at all. It was so great.
That I feel bad about was the Sarah and Ares thing. So when we originally translated it, we had Sayla there, because we didn't know, and then partway through, I actually was told, because I was at Fanime, like, Andy, like, I had a random thought just now, like, what if it's this? And so, like, we actually checked, and it turned out, so we did change that. We've changed the whole, we actually changed a lot in the GNs, to correct a lot of the mistakes that we made of things that we found out later. Even, like, as simple as, like, Shar's last name being spelled wrong. Like, we didn't know until volume 2 kind of thing. And so, like, the whole Sarah thing, the whole time I was like, oh, what if, like, they know about the H thing with the memory transfer because Ares is actually, like, somebody who was transplanted into Sarah's mind or whatever to, like, try to wake her up or whatever, not realizing that Shars had been lying the whole time kind of thing. So I wish that was something that we did earlier with, like, not misspelling her name. Because that would have been a more interesting way to theorize stuff. But there was a while that I actually knew that truth because of the whole, like, changing of that kind of thing. And I was just like, the whole time I'm like, I know, I don't want to say anything though. Obviously, anytime I ever found out something, because it was really funny, there was, like, clearly some people who were like, oh, reading Jump Plus, and then, like, acting as though, before it went simul, acting as though it was their predictions. And I'm reading it, I'm like, you can't fool me. The only person who's ever been able to spoil this manga for me is Shinohara Sensei. Like, so, like, yeah. No, like, that part was kind of ruined for me, to be completely honest, because, like, I knew for a while on that. But clone-wise, I don't know. I felt like, in retrospect, that was, like, a really obvious answer. But, like, the whole time you're thinking, like, I don't know. It's really weird when you're, like, looking at the manga now. You're like, oh, man, I totally should have seen that all coming.
Oh, man. What really kind of, I guess one red flag that kind of went off in my mind was that chapter where we do get to see the parents of everybody, you know, kind of convene and decide, oh yeah, let's not look for our children anymore. Like we spent enough time on this. Like this obviously isn't going to work out. They have to be presumed dead or whatever. I forget which characters. I think Luca's quote unquote father at the time, you know, before we find out about Luca, you know, like there's a scene where I guess he's being interviewed by the press as he's heading off to his limo, asking about how it feels to lose his kid or whatever, I think. And he says something along the lines of like, it feels like I'm being torn apart inside. And that always kind of stuck with me because it's like, because I'm pretty sure him and like and another character says this or something. It's said at least like twice. And that made me think like, oh, what does that mean? Like, I wonder what that's going to lead to. And in retrospect, like, that was such an interesting, like, sort of obvious hint that, like, I guess that's what this was leading to.
Yeah, the line is really heavy, but his face is kind of deadpan when he says it. And the thing is that he's not even Marco's clone. He's just, like, somebody he thought was going to end up being his heir, and it wasn't his heir, because Luca wasn't, quote-unquote, the first son that he thought he had. So it was, like, clear in that moment that, like, he just did not care. I feel like that meeting was presented in such a way where it was, like, the subtleness of the Japanese language where it's, like, they're saying one thing and meaning, like, more.
Yeah, I think it was also just a formality to trick Ares' foster mother as well, since she's the only parent who's not in on the conspiracy.
Yeah, so, like, Ares' mother is the only one that's not into... Though, I forgot her name, like, whoever the woman was, who was pretending to be Shar's mother, she didn't really seem to care all that much either.
Yeah.
Which was weird to me. And she didn't even really, if you looked at her, she didn't look like Shar's. She didn't even look like Shar's.
Yeah. Very subtle tell there that the parents did not really care about what just happened to their children, and were, in fact, just putting on an act to fool Ares' mom.
And see, I know, Marlene, you said you kind of knew from you kind of caught on from the beginning that the killer was going to be Char's. I don't know what you thought, Sid, but it was because at the time Ares was the only one who wasn't a clone that like seemed like her mother was actually her biological mother, especially because of like how she reacts compared to all the other parents of their clones or whatnot. I kind of thought for a second that Ares could be the killer.
I never really suspected Ares because she seemed too honest.
I didn't think it would be her just because she's the narrator.
And yeah, also because she's the perspective character. And it certainly would have been an interesting twist to have our perspective character turn out to be the bad guy all along. But I didn't see that happening because of the way Ares was written. And because I had seen Marlene and Annalisa heavily suspect Char's on Twitter and in the chapter comment sections, so I was starting to lose trust in him as well. I remember when the chapter came out where Ares was like, "Hey, Charles, is there something you're not telling us? I have photographic memory, but I don't remember seeing you in my biology class at all." And I remember going on Twitter and tweeting, "Oh my god, Marlene was right!" Even though, of course, not yet. Not yet, but you were right. Eventually.
Yeah, and I wasn't even actually right yet at that point, but... Yeah, no, even I was like, oh my god, I think I'm right. And the thing is that, like, even though he like, quote-unquote, settled that mystery, it wasn't, like, actually, like, it was settled too easily. It's like, oh yeah, here's my excuse. And it's like, okay, like, I don't know. It just, to me, it never really... There was always just something off about Char's in the end. In the way that arc ended, everyone else's, like, character arcs ended, like, really, like, happily, where they're, like, like, oh yeah, now I'm like gonna change, or now I can be myself, or whatever. And Sharsa's just ended with him gloomy in his room, and I'm like this is different. But Shars, I don't know. Maybe it's because I suddenly like understood like Shinohara Sensei's writing, or I don't know. At first, my reasons for her being Shars 2 changed constantly as well, to be completely honest. At one point, I had the idea that a lot of Shinohara Sensei's characters always looked very unique from each other, and the only time they don't is when they're related. And so I thought that Shars looked very similar to the teacher, and that was the first thing that tipped me off, which I should have realized with Kitori and with that watch of Kitori and Phoenicia. It's the whole Basu and Tsubaki thing. And then next it came to like how he kind of subtly undermined Kanata at every turn. Like at first it seemed like, oh, he's just playfully being like Shars, and then it was really like, oh, he's kind of like taking charge and steering the group in certain directions, and he's kind of like their survival is hinging on this character who is just crazy. He seemed off, and then I don't know why, like my reasons kept changing for him, and I can't say like, oh yeah, I was 100% right, it was him because of this. He always seemed off to me in some way or another, so that's why I thought it was him.
Yeah, I remember your initial theory was that Shars was related to Kanata's teacher, and since Kanata's teacher sacrificed himself to save Kanata, Shars was trying to avenge him by sabotaging the camping trip and killing Kanata.
Yeah, or like his cousin or whatever. Like, that was like my early Wyatt Shars theory kind of thing. Like, my reasons for it being him changed many times, but it was always him. And also, maybe it's because I just really liked him, but, like, it was also pretty clear which characters got more focus as well. It's like, okay, these characters are more important. Like, even, like, in Sket Dance, it's like, oh, these schoolmates are, like, more important than these other ones, even if they aren't in the Sket Dance kind of thing.
I'm just glad it didn't turn out to be Olgar, because, like, this is
that was too obvious.
Yeah.
I completely dismissed the possibility of Olgar being the traitor once he revealed his backstory and motives in his confrontation with Luca. At that point, it seemed like all his cards were laid out on the table, and there were no secrets left to unearth with him. But with Shars, when we get his first backstory, it's not under the same kind of circumstances we receive the other characters' backstories, and it doesn't immediately tie into addressing and resolving his character arc. It doesn't feel like he's ready to move forward and take charge of his life, like how other characters become rejuvenated after sharing theirs. At the conclusion of his backstory, we see him secluded in his room, sad, apologizing to Seira. So, you know there has to be something more to this. More to his past that we aren't being told yet. So there were more reasons to suspect him out of all the characters. By the time we reach Charles' first backstory, we know what's up with everyone else. So he was the most suspicious, and therefore the most likely candidate to be the traitor.
I need to learn to stop doubting Shinohara, because I talked about this on the last episode too. When I first got into Sket Dance, part of the reason people really liked it so much was because of the backstories of the Sket Dan, and I was legitimately wondering, like, are these really as good as people say they are? And obviously I was proven wrong. And now in this case, I'm like, man, I really hope it doesn't turn out to be Olgar. That's too easy. And then I was proven wrong. So clearly I just need to never doubt Shinohara ever again, because he doesn't usually steer me wrong.
I never suspected Olgar. I think Olgar was clearly a red herring, but also in the sense that, like, you knew he had issues, but it didn't seem like his issues, like, ow, that's my leg, buddy. So sorry, my dog literally just sits on my leg, like it's the floor. And so, like, when it comes to, Olgar, like, anybody who was the one who was planning on killing everyone snooping around the ship while the knowledge is known that, like, there's somebody who's the killer. Like, that's just too obvious. Like, Ulgar clearly had issues, but his issues were also clearly separate from what was ever going on. Like he was just too obvious.
Pretty much. But man, I really like that, the reveal for Char's, because, like,
it was so emotional.
Yeah, especially when, like, I think the part that, like, because I'll admit, I mean, obviously Skep Dance makes me cry at a lot of points. I didn't like tear up as much during Astra, but you know, that doesn't mean that you know, there aren't any of those classic, like, Shinohara, like, emotional highs. Like, that's kind of what I come to his works for at this point. I think it's when everybody's trying to chip away at Char's, trying to convince him to, you know, to live life for himself and not just not just follow orders from the king or whatever. Especially when Yunhua, like, when she says, like, you know, if I can change, so can you. Like, I think that actually kind of broke me.
Yeah. So I obviously wasn't able to talk. Like, at that point we were simul, and I'd already read the chapter, and, like, I was, like, crying every week around then. Like, I'd get the chapter, and I'd, like, be sitting at my desk reading. Like, I looked forward to Astra every time that the files came in. I was like, I would always be like, Andy, are they in yet? Andy, are the files in? Like, I wanted to read it so badly. And then I'd read it, and I'd sit there and I'd cry. Like, and then I'd message Annalisa and spoil stuff so that I didn't have to feel angry on my own. Like, be like, Annalisa, this happened. She's like, let me read it. Like, I didn't want to feel sad on my own. So.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think like, that portion of the series past Char's reveal, I think, is probably some of my favorite stuff in the entire series. Like from the reveal to them trying to win Char's back on their side, to trying to convince him, like, hey, yeah, like, what, like, were all those emotions you felt, like, with us, like, journeying with us, like, were those fake? Like, you totally enjoyed spending time with us and everything. And then Kanata rushing in to save Char's from the wormhole and losing an arm in the I was not expecting that. That's pretty it's pretty brutal for a Shinohara manga.
Yeah. Also, just, like, for the precedent of the entire series, like, that was probably the most graphic part of the whole series. There was never really, like, any, like, big injury, like, people got sick or whatever, or, like, they almost, like, or Luca and Ulga almost drowned, but no one, like, risked losing a limb before. Admittedly, like, when I'm looking at it, I was just like, Kanata, why did you stick your hand out? Like, why? Like, what did you think that was gonna do?
It's like, were you gonna punch the orb? Like, I get it, you want to save your friend, but, like, you gotta think some of this stuff through. And also, I couldn't, like, I think, the most unintentionally, like, funniest page in the entire manga is that 2-page spread of just his lone arm in the deep reaches of space. Was like,
no, you know where it is?
No.
His lone arm above Earth. His lone arm floating, because that's the only place that the wormhole lets out.
That's true.
Out above Earth. So his lone arm is literally just floating up above us right now. Like,
if it hasn't frozen and decayed by this point.
As soon as I saw that, I couldn't stop myself from giggling. Like, pfft, like, this is some JoJo shit right here. Like.
Well, the part I laughed at was, like, okay, I'm obviously, like, Fujo crap, and so, like, he's just sitting there, like Kanata's in, like, Char's arms, and he's just like, you're my right hand now, and I'm like, okay, buddy, okay.
And on that day, 1,000 doujinshi were drawn and written.
Yeah, no, I was just, like, sitting there reading that, like, I approve, like, I admit that there were times when I've worked on stuff where I may have been like, some of it wasn't like that. It wasn't like intentional, but I'd look at something that, like, Adrian would put in a script and I'd be like, hey, that's funny. Like, like, it wouldn't even be something that I did. I know that there was one time, actually, like, Andy and Alexi, I think, got pretty upset about something that was not upset. They were just like, why did you do that? And I'm like, looking at what they're talking, and I didn't do anything, right? And they were just reading it as though, like, I intentionally worded something some way. And I was looking, and they were like, why did you, like, don't do that. And I'm like, I don't know what you're even talking about right now. So apparently, like, they were the ones thinking that I did something, and they were reading into something that wasn't even intentional. Though, if anything, it was that translator who did that too. Like, the line made sense as is kind of thing. But, like, there was just times when I got scripts for Astra where I'm like, this feeds my Fijo bait, whatever. Which is funny because, like, I didn't write it that way. My translator put it that way, and I was just like, okay, this is funny. Like, in my head, and then I keep going, obviously. I did change some of it, obviously, but my dog is trying to eat a hat. Don't eat a hat.
I guess, I really wish, and see, part of the reason I like, as much as I like Astra Lost in Space, I feel kind of bad because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, I'm at a loss here because, like, I feel like as much as I like it, I don't feel like I can talk about Astra as much as I can Skep Dance because it is such a short series that, and like, you know, there's so much that happens and so much that's revealed over the course of the series about, you know, Earth and like what, like just the setting in the world of Astra is so like perfectly like connected and succinct, and it's just I'm like kind of in a, like, I don't have anything to say about the world building of Astra other than it's amazingly well done, and I have to, like, hats off to Shinohara. Like, I don't think, like, I can't imagine writing something this like complex and detailed. Like, you know, when I read stuff like this in One Piece, it's like I just read this and think, like, I could never write something like this. I could never keep track of all this detail.
I love all the alien worlds they visited, especially Shumor, the one with the mushrooms. It was really interesting to see how well thought out that ecosystem was, where fungi were the apex predators in its food chain.
Yeah, that was probably the most interesting planet they visited, honestly.
Yeah. And the whole conspiracy with Earth really impressed me. The world building and lore is just incredible. Towards the end of the series, they have to devote an entire chapter just to explain the entire backstory of the world, and it's really fascinating. And what I was really enthralled by was this idea of erasing history. That people have been raised to not think about the past, to forget about it and focus on the present. And because of that, they are disconnected from their heritage. They don't know where they came from. They don't know the history of the world they live in. This erasure of history, divorcing context from the things we see, and just accepting what they are on the surface, taking their existence and presence in our lives for granted, it's a very postmodern theme. And even though Astra takes place over a century in the future, and a fantastical sci-fi setting, this idea is very relevant to our present-day circumstances. There are a lot of people who live their lives without a firm grasp of history. They don't know the past of the place they live. They don't know the history of the things they use or interact with in their daily lives. They don't know how these things came to be. And that's what causes people to keep making mistaken assumptions, or have misunderstandings about what is supposed to be natural or normal. Many people are disconnected, perhaps even alienated, from the world around them. I have lived in the same house for over 15 years, but I don't know how that house was built, or who owned it previously. I don't know how my city was named. I don't know why it's called Eden Prairie. And I feel like that kind of sentiment is normal. I think if you ask the average person why the city that they lived in is named the way it is, or how it was founded, they couldn't tell you. You ask someone how their house was built, who built it, and the history of that, blank stares. These should be small, personal details, stuff people should know about because it's a part of their daily lives. And if we don't feel obligated to know simple stuff like that, then it becomes easier to ignore the bigger, but less personally relevant stuff. So the sentiment that we shouldn't worry about the past, that it doesn't matter, and we should focus on the present, well, there's danger in that. And this is the message I think Shinohara is trying to convey. For the sake of creating a utopia, the founders of Astra chose to erase important parts of the history of their world. It raises a question. They might have created a more peaceful world in doing that, but was it the right thing to do to rob people of their heritage? Is it right to have people focus on the present when in the future they might end up making the same mistakes again without the experiences of the past to warn them against taking those course of actions? Can humanity truly grow if they don't have ground to stand on? Can the future be made without the past to support it? I was really impressed in the way Shinohara brought up this idea in the series in defining the backstory of his world and how he tied it in thematically with the characters' experiences. They all have a lot of baggage in their past that informs who they are. And what they realize throughout the series is that they have to learn from those experiences, no matter how unpleasant or traumatic, and use the knowledge that they've gained from those hardships to grow from them and become better people. Shinohara really expresses that theme of learning from the past to create a better future very cohesively in every aspect of the manga, from the characters' arcs to the world building and the overall storytelling, really diving in deep to pick apart that question of what is best for the world. I'm really fascinated by that idea, and I think Shinohara explored it extremely well.
Yeah, I think, the idea of having to erase the past to create peace is really interesting because it was really relevant. I think it was referred to as, the age of terrorism, but that's, clearly our era, essentially. They're referring to what was our time, and, as this the manga explores what we're living now, and, the problems with the world, and it's to escape what our horrible existence is right now, we literally erased, in the future they erase, countries, languages, religion, all these other things to create this fake utopia of where nothing is wrong because we're all the same. But at the same time, it's and what's really interesting is that the second the can of worms opened, the manga says, the second everybody realized the truth, everyone started fighting again. Riots broke out, violence broke out, all this other stuff happened that was, insane. And I think that Astra Lost in Space, while obviously taking place in the future, is a really good commentary on the present and, the dangers of, the world that we live in and how far people are willing to go to just, be right, essentially. Because it says, they created these wormhole technologies to save humanity, and immediately after, people started killing each other with them. Immediately after these wormholes were created to, help people get to these new planets, people started to use the wormholes to kill each other. Immediately. And that's, such a... if this were to happen nowadays, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if that's how something like that would be used. And so in the end, Astra also becomes a commentary on, man's relationship with the technology that we live with, and the responsibility we have towards, humanity and the world that we live in and the people we live around. And you have the ability to do these horrible, the country has the ability to do these horrible things, but will they do the horrible things, or will they use their power to make the world a better place and strive towards an actual peace rather than an artificial peace where it's let's just pretend none of this bad stuff ever happened, kind of thing.
And there are no easy answers to this situation. Even by telling the truth, not all the problems are solved in the world. Arguably, it might have worsened since international wars were restarted. But they came to the decision that it was more important not to forget the past and erase humanity's mistakes. And because of that, there's now the possibility of learning from the warp technology and using it responsibly to better the world. So these themes of historical erasure through censorship and cultural erasure through globalization are important things to talk and think about. How we use technology responsibly is especially prescient, especially in regards to the cloning subplot and the concept of breeding clones to be spare bodies for harvesting organs or to transplant yourselves in order to attain pseudo-immortality. The ethics of this are already being discussed as we find ourselves on the precipice of turning what was once another far-flung sci-fi idea into reality. It is something that's currently being debated and worried about, so Astra's themes are very relevant to the conversations we're having now about the state of our world and its future.
Yeah, what's really funny is that, like, in one review I saw that someone's like, oh, year 2063, like, all of this is impossible, like, that soon. This is so manga gear, whatever. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, one, a lot of the technology present is actually, like, being worked on now. And two, like, read the whole series because you'll be surprised about the year 2063. Like, it's not all you think it is. Like that's what you're told, and you're taking it at face value, then you're not reading Shinohara's writing correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been disappointed with some of the reviews I've read that are dismissive of the series' premise and its world. And I definitely think that it's a series that is very smartly plotted and has really unique perspectives on some really complex themes. And that makes for a truly great sci-fi manga that has all the makings of classic sci-fi stories. It explores man's relationship with the universe around them and with technology. It's a truly genuine sci-fi experience.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's obviously, and I've said it many times, like one of the best things I've worked on. I think people look at it and they're like putting classic Shonen Jump logic to it, where they're like, oh, it's short. Oh, it's a shonen manga or whatever, and they jump to a conclusion on it that's not accurate. And I feel like if that was your immediate thought reading either like the first page or the description or seeing the chapter count, I really think that you should reconsider that perspective. I mean, obviously we just spoiled the whole thing, but I mean, or if you have a friend who's saying something like that, like, they should really reconsider, obviously, because they're taking what they're seeing at face value, and Astra Lost in Space is much more than just what's on the surface, because what's on the surface isn't always what's actually happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of perspectives that I've seen in reviews have been judging it based on it being a Shonen Jump manga, and what limited knowledge they might have about Sket Dance, simplifying everything down to surface-level observations about tropes and character archetypes without digging deeper into what Shinohara is actually writing. Shinohara certainly borrows familiar elements, but there's so much more to the series than those foundational concepts. I think it's important to treat it as its own work, divorced from this assumption of what a Shonen Jump manga is and can be. To get away from this idea that all Shonen Jump manga are universally designed to run for a long time and always possess a certain stock set of characters, because that's just a reductive way of looking at a series. You're going to miss the forest for the trees if you assume what a series is like before you read it and stubbornly refuse to engage with the text with an open mind. If you read it as its own work, you are going to find a really richly detailed sci-fi manga with incredibly nuanced characters, excellent world building, and very complex and well-developed themes. And I think that wraps up our thoughts on Sket Dance.
Sket Dance.
Astra. Sorry, Sket Dance was last time. Yes, I've still got it on the brain.
God, Sid, you go on about divorcing things from things. You clearly cannot divorce the idea of Sket Dance from Astra.
I just can't divorce Sket Dance from life. It always comes back somehow.
No, I totally can understand that feeling.
But no, this is the end of our Astra Lost in Space discussion. An incredible manga that we can't recommend enough. But before we totally close off the show, we need to answer some questions that we got from our Reddit listeners. We only have 3 questions, so hopefully this won't take too much time. But they're also interesting questions that are worth having a conversation about. So our first question is from Toby1, who asks, I heard Shinohara redid some pages specifically for the Viz graphic novels. What specifically did he redraw, and in which chapters?
In volume 2, you'll notice, so he had these rectangular white blocks that were, I need to pull up the chapters. I'm trying to remember exactly how it was, but essentially it was laid out in such a way that the only way we could have this text exist was if we had both the Japanese and English on the page, and I didn't really want to do that. And so, not on a whim, but like, pretty much like praying to whatever. Like, I was just like, oh my god, I hope this works out. I was just like, okay, let's try asking to see what we can do about getting a page that would make it so that we didn't have to use the English, or the Japanese with the English, because it just ended up being that it was impossible to lay it out otherwise, and without having like white blocks. So he, like, white blocks of nothing, and it was just weird and cutting into the art. So, oh yeah, now I remember, he had like the caption box in the art that was flat, along with a rectangular indent that would have another lyric. So it had the Japanese and then the English translation of the Japanese, and it was his English, so that wasn't something we put there. And so we actually ended up getting new pages that removed the caption box and just has the place for the lyrics to go. And it's in volume 2 towards the end when Yunfa is singing. And actually after that, strangely enough, in like chapter 45, he didn't ever laid out the text like that after that.
Interesting.
Wow.
We never ran into that problem again. I think Sasaki-san has said it too, that like Shinohara sensei is aware of the English readers of Astra and the fact that it's in English, and so I find it interesting that he did that.
Wow.
But yeah, for volume 2, you'll notice that the pages are slightly different for when Yunfa is singing at the end.
Very cool. I'm definitely looking forward to reading through that. Now, moving on, our second question comes from RC93, who asks, what motivated Shinohara-sensei in making a manga that deviated so much from his previous work? Unfortunately, we don't have Shinohara-sensei on our podcast, and we can't really answer for him, but we can make some guesses. I think that Shinohara just wanted to try out something new and tell a different kind of story from what we did before in Sket Dance, with a different genre and a different kind of storytelling style. I think a lot of mangaka want to try and do something different with their sophomore series, especially if they had been doing their first work for such a long time. I would guess that Shinohara wanted to try and shake things up and write a different kind of series to challenge himself creatively.
Yeah, I can't answer for Shinohara-sensei either.
And our final question comes from Dano the Fano, who touches upon something we talked about earlier when it comes to misconceptions about the series. He asks, was there another ending planned for Astra Lost in Space? Because from his understanding, it was axed. But the ending, while it felt rushed to him, wasn't as bad as it could have been. He thought it was a good way to end the series, so was there a plan for a different ending before it was axed? And another question, what is our personal opinion on the cancellation of manga and the subsequent rushed endings that they then receive? Do you, as an editor, feel that the massive amount of cancellations that seem to be rampant in this industry have any sort of reflection on the industry itself? So, to address the first part of his question, Astra was not actually cancelled. I feel that's pretty clear just from the way the series plays out. It had a natural ending. I think this ties back into misconceptions about what constitutes a successful manga, particularly a successful Shonen Jump manga. Some people expect successful Shonen Jump series have to run for dozens of volumes and can't fathom that they can just publish shorter but still complete works, which really is not that uncommon.
This is also something that didn't even run in, like, Jump, like, regularly. This was specifically Jump Plus, which, is sort of a digital edition of Shonen Jump, but with, like, like web exclusive stuff. But the point being, yeah.
Can I say something
Sure.
on this specifically? Shonen Jump Plus has, what's great about it is, unlike print, digital allows for as much content as digital allows for, which is theoretically infinite. So when it comes to the Shonen Jump itself is very competitive as a magazine. There's only so much space in it. Shonen Jump Plus, on the other hand, like if something sucks in there, they'd probably, like, this is just my guess, if something sucks in there, they'd probably, like, not continue it. But, like, in the case of Astra, like, was there another ending plan for Astra? I don't know. But I wouldn't say that it was canceled, only just from a reader's perspective. The story was they needed to get back to their planet, and this is how they were going to do it.
Yeah, the Astra crew's goal from the beginning is that they have to stop on these 5 planets on their way home. And they did exactly that. They visited each of the 5 planets, had an adventure on each one, and then went home. We didn't skip over any of that.
Yeah, and I don't feel like if the manga were to continue, for example, I don't think it would really be Astra Lost in Space. It'd probably be called, like, Astra Back on Astra, or, like, Astra Lost on Astra, or something like... And he made that joke. It would be
Attack on Astra, because it'd be just like that arc of Attack on Titan, where they don't fight Titans, but they stage a political coup to overthrow the government, which was a long and terrible arc that no one liked.
Yeah, like, it's not like that. As for cancellation on manga, though, like, I don't know where you're thinking there's mass cancellation of manga. Like, things just, yeah, for starters, things just end. Like, that's like one part of it. Eventually, what starts must end. Like, it's just the fact of things.
I mean, granted, like, a lot of stuff, and not like a lot, but every once in a while there are series in Jump that do get axed because obviously, it doesn't resonate with readers and nobody's reading it. It doesn't sell well or nothing. Eventually, stuff does get canceled, and it feels like that happens a lot. But like Marlene said, like sometimes things just have an end, and that's totally natural.
Yeah, I feel a lot of people have this disbelief that a series can just end. They think that a series has to run on forever until it gets canceled. But that's simply not true. Most series end because the author had a plan for their ending and felt ready to end things when the time is right. Not every series was cut short.
Yeah.
Also, though, it's strange to me that people specifically use the word canceled because, like, yes, if something is like 13 or 7 to 13 chapters in Shonen Jump and like 1 volume's worth of whatever it is for that, like, yeah, it probably was canceled just because of low rankings or whatever, and that's just the nature of a very competitive magazine. But like something like Toriko, for example, or Bleach, I don't see where the word cancel has ever been really explicitly used. It seems like it's a concept that the fans use.
And Tide Kubo specifically said he ended Bleach when he wanted to. People just assumed otherwise.
Yeah. So people assume that things...
Can I just throw this out there? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I want to throw this out there. I feel like people throw out that word canceled when they don't like the ending of a series. They just assume that, they totally didn't want to end it this way. It was obviously canceled. Like, I've talked to a lot of people who are fans of Bleach who are not satisfied with the ending of Bleach, that are just so angry at, like, Shonen Jump and Shueisha at Viz, and just assume that, like, Bleach got the short end of the stick. It was obviously canceled. Why? Bring back Bleach. Like, I remember there was a lot of anger over that ending for Bleach, from, at least in my circles anyway. And it's ridiculous.
It was fueled by these very ill-informed reactions, comments taken out of context, and a lot of assumptions. Many of us enjoyed Super Eye Patch Wolf's video when it came out, but in hindsight, that downfall of Bleach video he did was simply incorrect in asserting the series ended due to a lack of popularity, when a few months later, Tide Kubo divulged that he was the one who wanted it to end the way it did and when. And then in 2016, people were freaking out and making wild speculations on why so many long-running series were ending that year, when in reality, it was all just coincidence. It wasn't a reflection of any big agenda on Jump's part. Those series just all naturally came to end during the same year.
No, Sid, it's clear. It's clearly because Shonen Jump is trying to get rid of all their old stuff so they can get new stuff that people actually like.
Or, I don't know, it's a conspiracy. It's the Illuminati, you guys.
It's the Illuminati sponsored by Taco Bell.
Like, for example, like, Assassination Classroom, Nisekoi, Bleach.
And Toriko.
Now I think about it, like, those 4 series in Toriko all ended around the same time. I think that might be what they're referring to in this question. But, like, Assassination Classroom's ending was really solid. Nisekoi's ending was really solid. Bleach's ending was solid. Toriko's ending made me cry so much, but it was solid. Yeah. Like, I don't think that reflects really anything. I think it's just, I don't know. Like, I honestly can't say, I could say, like, my opinion. I don't think that throwing around the word canceled is always the correct assumption. Like, I feel like fans are very set in the terminology that they make for themselves and to discuss series a certain way.
Yeah.
But, like, it's your assumption. I mean, I personally can't say one way or another what Shueisha was thinking. I don't know. I don't know. If I did know, I probably wouldn't say it anyway, because I can't, but, like...
I mean, here's the thing. I think between the three of us, we've all probably read enough canceled comics at Jump to pick up on when something suddenly ends, like, okay, this was clearly rushed out the door. Like, I think we're all pretty capable of reading into that kind of thing pretty well. And I mean, as far as Astra goes, like, yeah, no, Astra, I'm pretty sure, like, ended the way it needed to and should have. Like, it felt pretty natural to me. Like, what else is there to cover? Like, they got back home. And, you know, everything's pretty resolved.
Some people would have liked to have seen a longer arc on Astra, where they would try and expose what their parents did to them and reveal the truth to the world. But honestly, that didn't need to be a whole arc. The point of Astra was the journey home and the characters becoming friends, and that had already been accomplished. The climax of the manga was when Charles revealed himself as a traitor, and they all had that big moment trying to reach out to him. Kanata sacrificing his arm to save Charles, and Charles realizing that there are people who care about him, and his life has value. That was the climax of the manga, and the rest was denouement. Wrapping up loose ends and giving all the characters closure to their stories. We didn't really need to see a long arc about them exposing the parents and revealing the lost history, because we already had resolved the stuff that was really important, and it was satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had a beginning, middle, and end, and that's it. Like, if that's the manga, there's been plenty of really good short manga.
But no, because it didn't run for at least 300 chapters, it got canceled, obviously.
Apparently so. I don't know. Like, if you sit down and actually read Astra, you'd be like, okay, this manga is solid. Yeah, it's really obvious when something is, like, 1 volume long or whatever, 1 or 2 volumes long, and, like, it's set up to have this whole story, and then it gets cut off or whatever. Then, like, yeah, maybe it was canceled. But, like, I think the thing that this fan is discussing, I don't know, that doesn't seem right. Like, reading that question, I was like, I don't know what you're even talking about. So,
yeah. I mean, Nano says it was from his understanding, which tells me that there's just a lot of misunderstanding about what it means for a series to end in a natural way, as opposed to being cut short because of editorial decisions, and how to recognize that. To get over this idea that a manga being short means it was canceled, because there's plenty of great short manga out there. A manga doesn't need to be long to tell a complete and fully realized story.
I think, like, other good short manga, like a silent, like, this isn't a Viz manga, but like a Silent Voice is really short, but it's really good.
Yeah. And a Silent Voice ran in Weekly Shonen magazine. The magazine best known for Fairy Tail, and especially Hajime no Ippo, one of the longest running manga of all time. It ran us alongside manga that had been running for decades. But A Silent Voice just ran for a little over a year, and told a complete, fully realized and satisfying story. Enjoy good manga. Don't worry about whether it was cancelled or not. Enjoy the story as it is. Take it as it is. Judge it on the content that's there and not on the stuff that isn't. Don't worry about the meta of its production history. Sometimes that's fun. It can be an important context to consider in certain respects. But this idea of, oh, this didn't do something I wanted or expected it to do before it ended. Was this cancelled? That's unhelpful and reductive. Again, you are missing the forest for the trees when you do that.
Like, you know, in my opinion, there are some series where, like, you can clearly tell something was rushed, but then, like, other times you could tell, like, sometimes I feel like it's obvious, but then again, like, you know, like we're saying, it doesn't really matter in the long run. Whether a thing ends or not, no matter the circumstances, things end eventually.
Yep, everything comes to an end at some point in some way.
Just like this podcast.
Like life.
Thank you so much for joining us for this incredibly long, but incredibly fun and informative podcast, Marlene.
Yeah, no problem, you guys. I'm sorry I'm bad at talking and rambling, and you're gonna hear, like, lots of, like, my end of the audio, like, talking to my dog, like, it's okay, buddy, or like, no, Toma. And, my dog has been pretty bad, I do apologize. Squeaky toys and his antler, so thank you so much, you guys.